Discipleship Program. We thank you very much for joining with us today as we continue the study in the book of Revelation. And, the big mysterious book of Revelation, the book that was debated on for many years, whether it should be even added to the Bible because nobody understood it. But over time, they decided to add it to the canon of the Bible. So we're going to go through more chapters today. Today we're going to start off with chapter 8 and go through that. And we're going to get in some more very difficult areas of Revelation to talk about. Just about from here on out for the next several chapters it's going to be difficult. And so I'm going to try to explain it the best I can of what I see. And then you can make up your own mind what you think it is. And there's some cases I'll tell you why I don't think it's this or don't think it's that some people have said in the past. But nobody has a complete handle what everything in Revelation is about. But all we can do is study it, narrow it down, and I'm hoping this class narrows a lot of it down for you. You'll be able to realize that we do have some answers for some of these things. And because you have groups of people since the first century church that has said, it's timelines, it's different ages, it's during the reign of the Romans. This was this Roman Empire, that was this Roman emperor. This is the Western Empire, this is the Eastern Empire, and they try to make it all very historical. I disagree with all that. I don't think it's historical. These are things that are yet to take place. And all you have to do is study the whole book of Revelation and realize this is yet to happen. Because when they say it's all historical, then you have to ask the question, well, when did Yeshua come back? When did Jesus come back? Toward the end of the book, that never happened. So how do you fit that in historically with the concept? And some of these ancient writers will actually write, well, this was Emperor, such and such, and this is Emperor such and such. Why do they say that? Well, maybe back then in the first and second century church, they were under such great persecution by the Romans that they thought they were in Revelation. They thought they're in the end times. But like the Apostle Paul said, especially the church of Thessalonica, we are not in the last days. He had to warn Thessalonians, thought they had missed the rapture. They were freaking out. I would too if I thought I missed the rapture. But Thessalonians thought they had missed the rapture. So Paul says, as I told you before when I was with you, and unfortunately we don't have that information. What did Paul tell them? He says, the rapture will not occur until there is a falling away. And lo and behold, today we're seeing a major falling away. This falling away has to do with faith. And so we're seeing that today, a major falling away. And so the falling away would have been easily interpreted, I guess, back during the days of Roman under severe persecution. But the church was just growing at that time. And it was expanding. Even during the time of the Roman Empire, it was expanding. There wasn't a falling away. So even though the Romans came in and persecuted, this church and that church and maybe killed several people in that particular church, there was not a falling away. A falling away is when people just suddenly turn their backs on God. And we're seeing that today. Matter of fact, just last week, another poll came out about that, and it's horrible. There was a time where people believed in God was in the 80% or higher. That poll last week was 38%. That is a terrible falling away. And so we're in the midst of a falling away, and it will probably get even worse. And also it says in Daniel, that when the iniquity is full, he will send the king of fierce countenance to punish the world. That would be the Antichrist or the beast or whatever name the prophet called it at the time. Every prophet had its own name for the Antichrist. So only 1 John calls it an Antichrist. All the other prophets had different names for it. And that seems to be the easy one for everybody to remember, Antichrist. If you're in Ezekiel, it's called Gog. In Daniel, it's called King of Fierce Countenance. Isaiah calls it the Assyrian. Revelation calls it the beast. So you have all kinds of names for the bad guy in the last days. And so the way a lot of people teach today is like everybody They all want to call it the Antichrist. Antichrist this, Antichrist that, everything's the Antichrist. But, I mean, it doesn't matter, you know, he goes by a lot of names, but we're talking about the same evil character that's coming upon the world, and he is probably not a man. More than likely, he's a fallen angel. And we'll discuss more of that when we get into Revelation, and we get into the bottomless pit and all those kind of things. So we're going to start with chapter 8 today, verse 1. So if you got the Bibles, open up to Revelation 8, beginning with verse 1. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of a half an hour. Wow. That word hour in Greek can mean definite time, season, day, point of time, moment, instant. So there's all kinds of possible definition for the word hour here. But whatever it is, it's a shorter period of time. It's a space between the seals and the trumpets. It is silence in heaven. It is not the rapture period. I've heard people say, oh, that's silence. That's probably the rapture. I can guarantee when the rapture occurs, it's not going to be silent. There's not going to be silence in heaven. There's going to be a lot of rejoicing, a lot of shouting. Like, yeah, I'm here, I'm out, I made it. You know, there are going to be a lot of people really happy. So that silence is just like God taking a breath before he continues here. Verse 2, and I saw 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. So now we're getting ready to go into the trumpet blowing situation. So 7 trumpets and 7 angels. Verse 3, and another angel came and stood at the altar, having golden censer, and it was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. Now, if you're familiar with the golden altar, you know it's before the Ark of the Covenant, and it is represent the incense burning on it represents the prayers coming off of it before the throne of God. So in this case, this angel pours on more incense, and it is the prayers of the saints. Now, I don't know what timeline of the prayers of the saints. It doesn't say. Is it just a current prayers of the saints, because the saints all know that tribulation's starting, because he just did the seals and plus the 4 horsemen of apocalypse? So is that the prayers that were poured out? Who knows? But the prayers are going to come before the very throne of God right here in verse 3. Verse 4, and the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints ascended up before God out of the angel's hands. Pretty interesting thoughts here. You know, the angel pours incense on the golden altar, and it becomes the prayers of the saints. Like he had all these prayers have been stored up, and all of a sudden they've been released. That's why it's more likely that prayers at recent times at this point, the prayers of the saints. I can't believe from, you know, for the last 2,000 years, all the prayers of the saints have been, you know, been held up until this moment. But more than likely it's been the prayers of the saints as tribulation began. Verse 5, and the angel took the censer and filled it with the fire of the altar and cast it unto the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and earthquake. So the fire that's on the golden altar comes from the brazen altar. They take the coals off the brazen altar and put it on the golden altar so it would burn the incense. Now, when we were back here at chapter 5, we learned that under the altar was the voice of the martyrs that had been killed. Again, the same kind of thing. Is it all the martyrs, or is it only the recent martyrs in the tribulation period? We do not know that. But when he takes the censer and fills it with fire and casts it to the earth, there are voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. And it's like it's setting up now for the 7 trumpets to sound, which you see in verse 6. Then we get to verse 7, the first one. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast on the earth, and a third part of the trees was burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. Wow, that's a lot. hail and fire mingled with blood. They were cast upon the earth, and a third of all the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. This would include all the wheat, tares, crops, hay, blades, fruit trees, all these things. So this is a pretty big devastation right here at the first trumpet. And so you got to remember too that in Exodus, one of the plagues that fell upon Egypt was also same thing, hail and thunders that just tore everything up in the land of Egypt, including trees. There were mighty chunks of hail, big hail, enough to tear down trees. It's not like little hailstorms we get around here. These are big hailstorms, and they would kill any man or beast that's out in the field. That's why God told them to put their cattle away and not be outside, because this hail would kill you. It's big chunks of hail in Exodus that came down and destroyed the crops and the trees and killed any animal or man that was standing outside. All it says in Exodus was a great hail, great large chunks of hail. I remember seeing pictures sometimes in the Midwest of hail, that might be 3 or 4 inches across. I thought, unbelievable. But whatever size it was big enough to kill you here in Revelation. So let's go to verse 8. And the second angel sounded, and it was like a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood. Now this is a really unusual situation here. The second angel blew his trumpet, and a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood. So what sea are we talking about? It would be interesting if we could identify the sea. Is it all the oceans? Is it just one ocean? Is it a particular sea? Is it just the Dead Sea in Israel? We do not know. Is it the Mediterranean Sea? Is it the Red Sea? We do not know about what sea we're talking about here. But it said a third part of the sea became blood. Let's talk about the great mountain burning with fire for a moment. It is interesting to hear everybody's interpretation what a great mountain burning with fire is. What do you think it is? A meteor? A comet? A rocket? What do you think it is? Did you know that in the book of Enoch, Enoch saw a place that had 7 stars in it that looked like great mountains burning with fire? These were bad angels, very bad angels. And Enoch even asked his, I guess you'd call it tour guide at that time, one of the angels, said, what are these? He said, these are those angels who were disobedient against God. But they were like great mountains burning with fire. They're powerful, powerful angels that God's got locked up. Could we be talking about that here? Is it a mountain burning with fire, an angel that's being thrown to the earth? Probably, I would happen to believe that's probably what it is. It's a great mountain burning with fire is one of the bad angels being cast to the earth. Because we do know that Enoch also says that a lot of the bad angels are coming back. He says they'll come back beginning in the land of the Parthians and the Medes. That's that area in eastern Turkey, Armenia, Georgia, northern Iran. They're coming back to that part of the earth. So there's a good chance that this is what the mountain burning with fire is. And then when it's cast to the earth, 1/3 of all the trees are burned up, all the grass is burned up. So it's pretty devastating. And if you're interested, if you have a book of Enoch, you can look it up. It would be Enoch 21 verses 1 through 3. You have chapter 21 verses 1, 2, 3, if you want to read that about the mountains burning as with fire. All right, we also found out that, let's see, where was I? When this happened, the mountain burning with fire was cast down, that a third part of the creatures that were in the sea and had life died, and a third part of the ships were destroyed. Now this might give us a clue a little bit better what we're talking about. This has to be a sea or an ocean that has fish in it and ships in it. If you've ever seen the Dead Sea, there are no ships in it and there are no fish in it. So this is not talking about the Dead Sea. So this is an ocean of some sort that has ships and fish, or creatures that live in it. Verse 10, and the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. This is very interesting here. What is this great star from heaven falling down that falls on the rivers and upon the fountains of water? A lot of people say, well, this is probably a nuclear bomb or something that's coming down. Well, how does a nuclear bomb fall upon different places around the world on third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of water? How does that happen? See, so sometimes you have to use a little logic in figuring out book of Revelation. So how does a great star do that? You got to remember too that star is synonymous with angels in the book of Revelation. Quite often the angels are referred to as stars. And so you got to remember that. So this could be an angel coming down, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of water. Now, can an angel divide himself up like that? I don't know. I guess it's possible he could do that. But whatever it is that falls from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, if it is a rocket, if it is a nuclear weapon, and it comes down and explodes, how does it get to the fountains of water? Fountains of water are typically under the ground. Now, if it's a river, yeah, maybe a nuclear explosion can poison the river. But if it's fountains of water, how does it get down there? Very interesting. Verse 11 is even more confusing. Because in verse 11 it says, and the name of the star is called Wormwood. And a third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. They became poisonous. And a lot of people died because the water was poisonous. Wow. Did you know the Ukrainian word for wormwood is Chernobyl? Anybody ever heard that before? That Chernobyl meant wormwood? And that was that power plant that blew up in Ukraine, Kiev, Ukraine, and killed all those people. And the radioactivity, they had to bury it in sand and cement just to try to stop the radioactive poisoning. There were a lot of deaths in Kiev and the surrounding country because of that Chernobyl plant blowing up like it did. So, was that a warning from God that wormwood is going to be a radioactive judgment? Is that how you get radioactivity into all the rivers and the fountains of water? Maybe, because if the radioactivity gets down on the ground and it rains, that could certainly get down to the fountains of water, soak through the groundwater, and get into the fountains, underground water streams. Matter of fact, you ever seen that movie Chernobyl? They talked about that, how they had to stop the meltdown before it got into the water tables. So I guess that's one way to get to the fountains of water. So we may be looking here with wormwood, we may be looking at a nuclear explosion taking place. And so we'll see. And it says, many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. Verse 12, and the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars. So as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and night likewise. All right, so it's going dark. The sun's going to be greatly dimmed. This is a major theme throughout the Bible. You'll find stuff about it getting dark and the sun turning red, and or moon turning red, the sun going dark, and the stars being blocked. I'm going to read several scriptures to you if you want to write them down in other places in the Bible where this occurs. Revelation 9:2, Isaiah 13 verses 9 through 13, Joel 7 through 10. Joel chapter 2, 7 through 10, Joel 2:31, Joel 3:15, Matthew 24 verse 29, Acts 13 verse 11, Revelation 6:12, Revelation 8:12, and I already mentioned it, Revelation 9:2. A lot of scriptures that talk about in the last days is going to get dark. The sun is going to lose its shine, and the moon's going to lose its shine, and the stars will stop shining. Why is that? Is it because of all the dust in the air, or the clouds in the air from nuclear explosions, or is it something God is doing? You'd have to break down and look at all those different scriptures. But it sounds like, something really stirring up the dust on the earth. In my mind, when you look at it, that the sky fills up with clouds of dust in the sky that blocks the sun and the moon, the light. That has to be pretty heavy clouds of dirt and dust in the sky to do that. So you got a lot of these examples of things going dark throughout the Bible when this all takes place. Verse 12, and the fourth angel sounded, and a third part of the sun was smitten, a third part of the moon, a third part of the stars, so as a third part of them was darkened, and the day showed not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. So this probably lasts for a long time, if not during the whole tribulation period. Verse 13, and I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels which are yet to sound. So the next three trumpets that are to blow, more destruction's coming to the earth, more death is coming to the earth. That's why it says woe 3 times. Woe, woe, woe. Woe to 3 more trumpets that's getting ready to blow on the earth. And we're going to be reading about those here in a moment, but they're pretty scary, all the things that's getting ready to take place. Revelation chapter 9. And the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven to the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. Wow, bottomless pit. Let's talk about this star fall from heaven, and it is a key from the bottomless pit. This does not mean that it was a star was under judgment and thrown out of heaven or anything like that. He just came down, he's got a key, and he unlocks the bottomless pit. Now, some commentators say it's probably Satan. Why would God give Satan a key to the bottomless pit? I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But, let's talk about Satan falling for a moment. In the Bible, there are 3 different places where we see where Satan falls. Well, first one is Isaiah 14, verses 12 through 19. Satan falls, the anointed cherub, from the throne. Then we read again in Luke 10:18, he falls again. Then we finally see in Revelation 12:4, he is thrown to the earth. So Satan is kicked out of the throne room. He's in the mid area. That's why he's called the prince of the air. He's in the mid area. Then he gets thrown out of that onto the earth. Satan does not want to be on the earth, but God throws him to the earth. And then when he gets thrown to the earth, he comes with great anger. He's very fierce at that time. So, the key to the bottomless pit. In Daniel 12:1, it says that Michael will stand up, and there'll be a tribulation unlike anything that's ever been seen or heard before. Daniel 12:1. Michael is an archangel. He is one of the most powerful angels there are. And so my take on that is Michael is the one that's guarding the bottomless pit. He might have been the one thrown down with a key to the bottomless pit, Michael the archangel. And he opens it up. And when that bottomless pit opens up, all kinds of nasty critters come out of it. It's a prison. It's very interesting that Enoch talks about the bottomless pit. It says that there was in Enoch that he saw a place that had no firm foundation. That's bottomless pit. Enoch saw this. So that's the same place where he saw those mountains burning as with fire. A place that had no firm foundation. So Michael, there's a good chance that Michael opens up the bottomless pit. When he does, it says that the sun and the air darken, turning to smoke. Again, here we go, we're talking about things getting dark again when the bottomless pit opens up. In verse 3, and there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and to them was given power as scorpions of the earth have power. So right away, scorpions on the earth have power because of their tail. They sting, they hurt, they create a lot of pain. So these particular locust-like creatures are coming out of the bottomless pit. We also know in the bottomless pit was a lot of bad angels, like the mountain burning with fire. Verse 4, and it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. So these locusts are going after people that do not have the seal of God on them. Remember, we read in Revelation 7, God sealed 144,000 from the 12 tribes of Israel. But there's another seal of God. You read about this in 2 Corinthians 1:22, that we are sealed with the Holy Spirit. Ephesians 4:30, they were sealed unto the days of redemption. So I think it would be easy to translate this to understand that if you're not part of the house of Israel that got sealed, you are sealed by the Holy Spirit. So these locusts with the tails of scorpions are not going to mess with those that have the Holy Spirit. And that's an important thing to understand how that works, because I don't think I want to be here when they come down with tails of scorpion, creating all kinds of pain. Verse 5, Revelation 9. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but they should be tormented 5 months, and their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when he strikes a man. So these supernatural locusts that are coming down and striking people will torment men for 5 months. Verse 6 says, and in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and desire to die, and death shall flee from them. So these scorpions will be so painful that men want to die from their stings, but God's not going to let them die. He's going to let them get stung, but they're not going to die. So whatever kind of power that these things have coming out of the bottomless pit, they will certainly be painful, extremely painful to mankind. Now we see a little description of what they might look like. Verse 7. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses, prepared unto battle, and on their heads as it were crowns, like gold, and their faces were as the face of men. And they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth as the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates, as it were the breastplates of iron. And the sound of the wings was the sound of chariots, of many horses running to battle. And they had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. Their power was to hurt men for 5 months. I don't want to meet one of these things. I don't care if I know it's going to leave me alone. I still don't want to meet one of these things. These are scary creatures. How'd you like to see one of these things flying at you? Wow. So hold your spot right there, and let's go to Joel chapter 2. Joel chapter 2. Joel chapter 2. We'll look at chapter 1, a couple of things in chapter 1 first. Look at verse 6 in chapter 1. For a nation has come up upon my land, strong and without number, whose teeth are like teeth of lions, and he has the cheek teeth of a great lion. So there's a nation coming upon the land of Israel. Now some people interpret all this as the Babylonians, but it's not. And I'll tell you why here in a moment. So let's go to chapter 2. Blow you the trumpet in Zion and sound the alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord comes, for it is near at hand. So this is the day of the Lord that's coming in Joel chapter 2. So it says, do you remember that song that people used to sing for praise song? Blow the trumpet in Zion, Zion. Sound the alarm in my holy mountain. Sound the trumpet in Zion, Zion. Great is the Lord. All right, that was a fun praise song we used to sing. But most people did not understand the scriptures they were singing. They're talking about total death and destruction. It comes out of Joel chapter 2. And everybody's dancing and swinging around, blow the trumpet in Zion, having a grand old time. But the song is about death and destruction. So let's look at chapter 2, Joel, some more here. Verse 2, a day of darkness and a day of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and strong. There has not been ever like it, and neither shall there be any more after it. So this is talking about this whatever this army is that's coming. There'll be nothing like it. Never was anything like it before, and neither will be anything like it afterwards. So this is a very unusual situation, this nation that has come upon the land of Israel. Verse 3, a fire devours before them, and behind them a flame burns, and the land is as the Garden of Eden before them. Behind them a desolate wilderness, and yet nothing shall escape them. Now, if you remember, we were reading in Revelation, it said, it said, do not hurt, do not hurt the grass, trees, or any green thing. It was telling these supernatural locusts. But this one here on Joel says, a fire comes before these creatures and burns everything up. The land's like a Garden of Eden, and after these creatures go by, becomes a desolate wilderness. So is the things that we were reading in Revelation 9 the same thing as Joel 2, or is there something else in Revelation that will fit Joel 2? There's another possibility, and we'll get to that later or next week. But but look at the appearance of them when it says here, verse 4, Joel chapter 2. The appearance of them is as horses, and as horsemen, so shall they run. Okay, well, we knew that Revelation 9 says they look like horses too. Verse 5, like the noise of chariots on the top of mountains shall they leap, like the noise of flame of fire devours the stubble as a strong people set in battle array. Wow, okay. Verse 6, before their face the people shall be much pained. All faces shall gather blackness. So when these things come, people's faces will turn very pale. That's what they're talking about. Total pale out of fear, because these things are coming. And it all, it sounds like when their wings sound like a rush of mighty rushing rivers. They're going to hear these things coming. It's going to have this roar as these things coming, as we read in Joel here. Verse 7 of Joel 2. They shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall like men of war. They shall march every one on his ways, and they shall not break their ranks. Neither shall one thrust another. They shall walk every one in his path, and when they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. Does that sound like human beings? It's not human beings. And there's a lot of commentaries that say, oh, these are tanks, these are helicopters, these are, some kind of special machines flying people. But it says they shall not be wounded. You can blow tanks up, planes up, helicopters up, you can do all that. These guys do not break rank, nor do they die. These are supernatural critters coming out of the bottomless pit. And it's quite obvious. To try to make this fit something in the natural just doesn't work. And they shall run to and fro in the city. They shall run upon the wall. They shall climb up the houses. They shall enter in the window like a thief. Okay. How does a helicopter enter into a window? You know, people make these commentary statements they don't think through. And the earth shall quake before them, and the heavens shall tremble. And here we go again. The sun and the moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. Verse 11, and the Lord shall utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great, for he is strong and executes his word. For the day of the Lord is great and very terrible. Who can abide by it? So it's the army of the Lord. But just because it's the army of the Lord doesn't mean that it's a nice army. The Lord can use any kind of army he wants to execute his judgment. So you can see in Joel chapter 2, it has something to do with the last days. Because you can look down at, later on, he pours out his spirit upon all flesh. Verse 28 of Joel 2. And verse 24 and 25 of Joel chapter 2. These are things that happen after the tribulation period. So these creatures are coming out before Yeshua comes back. Pretty scary things that are going to take place. All right, let's go back to Revelation. Okay. This is not a normal army. With the teeth of lions, breastplates of iron, tails of scorpions. Wow. Verse 11. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in Greek tongue has his name Apollyon. So the angel of the bottomless pit is the one that's in charge of these things that come out. An angel of the bottomless pit. Now, is that the beast of Revelation? Or is it another one of his cohorts that are down there? Who knows? But it could be the beast. We do know that the beast of Revelation comes out of the bottomless pit. We'll read that later on when we get like to chapter 13. He comes out of the bottomless pit. So is the beast the angel over the bottomless pit? It's very possible. And he comes out with great fury. Just like when Satan gets thrown to the earth, he comes with great fury too, that we'll read in chapter 12. So, I don't know. Pure speculation, but it's a possibility. Verse 12. One woe is past. Behold, there comes two more woes hereafter. So the first woe has passed where the fifth angel blew his trumpet that opened up the bottomless pit, and these spiritual locust-like critters come out. That's the first woe. So verse 13, and the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God. Who's at the golden altar? The martyrs. The martyrs are at the golden altar. Remember when I was talking about the martyrs? That they will have a say-so down the line of what kind of judgment gets poured out upon the earth to avenge their blood. And this is them, right here. Verse 14, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. So the martyrs are crying out, loose the four angels, loose the kraken. Send the kraken out. Loose the four angels. That's what the martyrs are crying out. How long, O Lord, till you avenge our blood? Remember, they called out to God. And God said, not until more of you die yet. This is indication of the martyrs probably being created in the tribulation period. So, verse 14, and the 4 angels were loosed. Now these are not nice angels, which are prepared for an hour, a day, and a month, and a year, to slay 1/3 of mankind. These are really nasty angels. They're going to kill 1/3 of mankind. Now look at verse 16 very carefully here. And the number of the army of the what? Horsemen were 200,000, and I heard the number of them. So I heard the number of the army of the horsemen. What horsemen? It appears that the 4 angels are generals. And the 4 horsemen of apocalypse that we read about earlier were, majors or whatever, lieutenants and captains or whatever. But their whole army is 200 million. It doesn't say Chinese. Remember, a lot of the earlier prophecy writers used to say, oh, that's 200 million Chinese. It's the only country in the world that can put together a 200 million man army. Well, that's not true. But, people drank the Kool-Aid on it. And this is the army of the horsemen. That's what it says, the army of the horsemen. And it had something to do with the 4 angels that came out of the river Euphrates, which are nasty angels. So this horsemen, 200 million of them. Now, if they also are the army of the horsemen, that means the 4 horsemen of apocalypse, they're all coming with the different plagues that we read about the 4 angels, or the 4 horsemen. Remember, pestilence, war, famine, disease, murder, killing, that these 4 horsemen did. So this army is 200,000 that's with the horsemen, led by these 4 angels, which are the generals. It doesn't take long for an spiritual army of 200 million to wreak havoc upon the earth. These supernatural critters will fly all over the world doing their nasty deed. Look at verse 17. And thus I saw horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire, of jacinth, and brimstone, and the head of the horses were of heads of lions, and out of their mouth issued fire, smoke, and brimstone. Wow. Fire, smoke, and brimstone. So, these 200 million horsemen will burn up everything. Now that sounds more like what we read in Joel chapter 2. That they will burn everything up. Be like the Garden of Eden in front of them and the wilderness behind them. So these horsemen are going to come and just devastate the earth and burn up every green thing there is upon the earth. 18, and by these 3 was a third part of men killed. What do we mean by these 3? What are we talking about? These 3. We haven't had the 3rd woe yet. We haven't heard the 3rd trumpet blown yet. So, is the 3 talking about brimstone, fire, and smoke? Or just including when the 7th trumpet blows down the line? We do not know. But I can tell you this, that the next woe we read about is when Satan is thrown to the earth. When Satan is thrown to the earth in chapter 12, it says, woe to the inhabitants of the earth. Is that the 3rd woe? I don't know. Or is it talking about fire, smoke, and brimstone? I tend to believe it has something to do with the trumpets. And I don't know why it said these 3, because we've not had the 3rd trumpet blow yet. The seventh trumpet has not blown yet. Verse 19, for their power is in their mouth and in their tails, for their tails like unto serpents. They had heads, and with them they do hurt. And the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues repented not of the work of their hands, that they should not worship devils, idols of gold and silver, and brass, and stone, and of wood, which neither can see, nor hear, nor walk. So apparently, during the time of the tribulation, there's a tremendous amount of idolatry. I suspect one of the major things of idolatry that will take place in the tribulation will be images of the beast and false prophet. But they haven't even showed up yet here. But like I said, you cannot look at Revelation in a strict chronological order. It eventually keeps moving one direction, but it bounces back and forth. Why is there so much idols of gold, silver, and brass, and stone, and wood? Why there's a lot of idols? Now, a lot of the world has those idols. Hinduism has a lot of those idols. Catholicism has a lot of those idols. So there are a lot of idols out there already today. But they repented not of the work of their hands. When I was in India, preaching in India, I saw so much idolatry, I could not believe that there was anybody, a nation, that would have that much idolatry. Everywhere you went were images and statues. The Hindus have something like 30,000 gods. And they will pile them up all in one spot. Even Mary and Jesus would be in a whole line of all the gods. But they have gods all over the place. That's why right now India is getting pretty radical against Christians and starting to kill Christians. Big wow. That's not a shocker. Jesus said they hated me, they'll hate you. So I'm not surprised by that. But there is a tremendous amount of idolatry in India. You see it all over the place. I was in India when there was a big idolatry ceremony taking place. And the pastor I was with says, yeah, they got some kind of celebration about a certain amount of gods getting ready to come up. And while we were driving to a location, we were headed to another pastor's house down in a town close by. All these trucks were going by us, and pickups and everything else, and flatbeds. Well, all the idols in the back of the flatbeds, with multiple arms and elephant trunks and all this kind of stuff, went driving by. I said, what are they going to do with those things? Oh, they're all going to pile them up somewhere, probably on a street corner somewhere. Then when the celebration's over, they take them down again and put them back in their garage. Wait until the next celebration, and they bring them back again and set them on street corners. Wow. They haul these gods around. I like what Isaiah says, How can they be gods? Because they can't speak. They cannot walk. You have to fasten them. You have to carry them. How can they be gods? How true that is. So idolatry will be big in the tribulation period. There's a lot of it already going on now. There's even going to be more down the line. Verse 21, neither they repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts. So, when people say, well, I don't worship idols. Yeah, but do you do these other things in verse 21? Man will not repent of these things. So no matter what kind of judgment God sends upon the earth, kind of reminds you of the Passover story and the plagues that came upon Pharaoh. He would not let the people go. Although his country's being destroyed, he will not let the people go. And his chiefs and all that kept telling Pharaoh, let them go, get them out of there. Egypt is destroyed. He would not do it. He was so hard-headed. He continued to let one plague after another come. And of course, he would always tell Moses, Okay, Moses, I changed my mind. I'll let the people go. Just make these swarms go away. Make these frogs go away. Change the water back to water from blood. Do all these things for me, and I'll let the people go. And every time Moses prayed to God and stopped the plague, Pharaoh changed his mind. That's the way Satan operates. That's why he's known as a great liar and a great deceiver. He will make those kind of declarations to get you to do something, then he changes his mind. He changed his mind all the way up to the death of the firstborn. After he lost his own son, then he got serious about it. But in all fairness, speaking of Pharaoh and all these plagues, it said God hardened the heart of Pharaoh. So Pharaoh didn't have much of a chance. God hardened his heart. God was going to make sure that Pharaoh rejected whatever it was, the plagues that were coming. Because God wanted to show the world that he is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that he brought the Hebrews out, just like he said he would. So God would harden the heart of Pharaoh. And we learn also on that last plague, death of the firstborn. Pharaoh said, get out, take your families, take your children, take your women. Because he kept giving them rules of how much they could have. Well, you can go on your journey, but do not take your women. Or you can go on a journey and do not take your children. Or you can go on your journey, but don't take your animals for sacrifice. Or just do the sacrifice here, which Moses says, we cannot do so because the animals that we will sacrifice are as gods to the Egyptians, and they will attack us. So Satan, or Pharaoh, acting like Satan, kept giving rules and ideas of what Moses had to do. And that's the way Satan works. He's a great negotiator and a great deceiver. He tried to get you to do, remember what he did to Eve in the garden? Oh, I'm not supposed to eat anything. Not so, Eve. God don't want you to eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil because you'll be like God. He don't want you to be like God. And so Eve took the fruit. And Adam saw that Eve took the fruit, and he didn't want Eve to take the brunt of the judgment, so then he ate some. That's how Satan deceives and lies. And you can see it to Pharaoh also, that this would take place. So, what's that? And Cain and Abel concept too, yeah. Wow. So there's a lot of these things that you'll see would take place, that the people don't repent of their sins. These 4 angels from the Euphrates, man, they're bad ones. They don't repent. Yep. We also learn, that this is the second woe with the 4 angels, Euphrates, the second woe. Like I said, we don't know what the third woe is, although it does say in Revelation 12:12, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, for Satan is thrown down among you. Is that it? And that is right after the 7th trump blows. So it could be. These woes seem to go with the trumpets. So we've had a couple instances where 1/3 of men died, another incident where another 1/3 man died. That's 2/3 of the population of the world. If there's 9 billion people on the earth, you're talking about 6 billion people just died. 6 billion. Well, that ought to make the global warming people happy. Yeah, but there was so much darkness and stuff darkened the sun and the moon. There's all talking about global warming effects. It's even worse during the tribulation period. And I'd like to know how all these so-called climate change people and globalists worried about global warming, how they're going to deal with tribulation. You want to talk about global warming. That's not going to be pretty at all when that starts to happen. All right. Let's go to chapter 10. And I saw another mighty angel come down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was upon his head, and his face was as it were the sun, and his feet as pillars of fire. Some commentators will tell you that this is a representation of the Messiah, if not the Messiah himself. Because a lot of things that describe the Messiah uses the same analogies here. Verse 2, and he had in his hand a little book open. And he set his right foot upon the sea and his left foot on the earth. Now, I don't think this really means that he's a giant and he's got a foot way over here and a foot way over here. He can be standing right on a shoreline and do both. But it's interesting, he puts his feet on the earth and on the sea. Again, what sea? What sea are we talking about? And he cried with a loud voice, as when a lion roars. And when he had cried, 7 thunders uttered their voices. So when this angel cried with a loud voice, 7 thunders replied. I guess they're calling them thunders because of the deep roar of the voices makes them sound like thunder. Verse 4, when the 7 thunders had uttered their voices, I was about to write, and I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, seal up those things which the 7 thunders uttered, and write them not. Bummer. What did they say? Why? A voice from heaven saying, seal up those things that the 7 thunders said. Why are they keeping this secret? Why is this such a mystery? It sure opened the door for a lot of cults. They say, God's revealed to us what the 7 thunders had said. And they make up all kinds of nonsense. Why were they quiet? Will we ever know those things? Maybe we already know. I don't know. Verse 5, and the angel which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth lift up his hand to heaven, and swear by him that lives forever and ever, who created the heaven and the things that are therein, and of the earth and the things that are there, and the sea and the things which are there, that there should be time no more. So some commentators say that this person who lives forever and ever is talking about Yeshua, is talking about Jesus, so the angel can't be Jesus, even though he has a lot of similar descriptions. But there's some pretty powerful angels working with the Lord, so who knows? Or it could be talking about God the Father. Who knows what's taking place here? But in Revelation 11, Yeshua sits on the throne of God in that chapter, and we will talk about that when we get there. Verse 7, but in the days of the voice of the 7th angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he declared to his servants the prophets. So time will be no more, said in verse 6. Did it mean that the clock stopped? No. It means that everything is going to be fulfilled that God talked about. All the words of prophecy throughout the Bible are going to be fulfilled at this point. So when it's talking about time no more, it just says that the advent is at hand. There are no more delays. That's what he's really saying. No more delays. The mystery of God should be finished, as he has declared to his servants, the prophets. So everything the prophets talked about are being fulfilled, is what it's saying here. That's what makes Revelation a pretty cool book, actually. You should be able to compare everything the prophets have said to the book of Revelation. Verse 8, and the voice which I heard from heaven spoke unto me again, saying, go and take the little book, which is open in the hand of the angel, which stands upon the sea and upon the earth. So the voice told John to go take the little book. Verse 9, and I went to the angel and said unto him, give me, I don't think he said it with a whole lot of confidence. He said, would you give me the book? I can just picture John on this. I need the book. And he said unto me, take it and eat it. And it shall make your belly bitter, but it shall be in your mouth sweet as honey. And I took the little book out of the angel's hand and ate it up. It was in my mouth sweet as honey, but as soon as I had eaten it, my belly was bitter. He said unto me, you shall prophesy again before many peoples, nations, tongues, and kings. So in other words, on verse 11, John had written all this stuff down and gave us a book of Revelation. So as we read and study, we're fulfilling verse 11, chapter 10, as we're studying these things. Must prophesy again before many peoples, nations, tongues, and kings. So, wow. All these things that, taking place here. All God's plans are finished at this moment. Everything he declared has been fulfilled. The mystery of God is finished. Now he just goes on the rest of the book here and elaborates on things. So, interesting what's taking place here. Tremendous amount of information. And we're just getting started. There's a whole lot more yet to the book of Revelation. Chapter 11. There was given me a reed like a rod. And the angel stood, saying, rise and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out. That's the outer court. And measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall be treaded under 42 months, 3.5 years. So the temple and its courts are built during this time. Now all of a sudden the outer court is given to the Gentiles. Verse 3, and I'll give my power unto my 2 witnesses, that they should prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth, 3.5 years. 3.5 years. So this tells you here, the temple has to be built during the tribulation period. It has to be built. Now, like I've always said before, it could be a tabernacle, it could be a tent. If they find the Ark of the Covenant, they're going to look for a place to house it. And that could be the impetus for them to want to build a temple, at least erect a tabernacle tent. And it will have outer court and inner court concepts to it. Verse 3, and I'll give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, 3.5 years, clothed in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 candlesticks standing before the God of the earth. You read about this in Zechariah chapter 4, verse 3. And if any man, verse 5, any man hurt them, fire will proceed out of their mouth and devour their enemies. If any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. These 2 witnesses are not going to tolerate anybody trying to hurt them. Who are these 2 witnesses? Well, we have a good guess. We're pretty sure that one of them is going to be Elijah, because Elijah says in Malachi, he will come back on the great day of the Lord. And he'll turn the hearts of the fathers to the sons and daughters, and the hearts of the sons and daughters to the fathers. You read in Malachi. So it does appear like Elijah is one of the witnesses. Who's the other witness? My personal take on this is the other witness is Enoch. Because when Enoch ascended into heaven without dying, God says, you will be my witness. There's two people that did not die that went into heaven. Elijah and Enoch. The Bible says you are to die once and then judgment. Enoch and Elijah did not die. Some people say, well, it's got to be Moses because some of the same judgments or some of the same things are in the book of Exodus. But Moses died. God is not going to let him die again, and these two witnesses get killed. He's not going to allow Moses to die again. So it makes sense that either people we do not know, or they're Elijah and Enoch, because they're going to die in this chapter. They're going to die. The beast of Revelation will kill them. So more than likely, I think it's going to be Elijah and Enoch. It says, fires come out of the mouth and they devour the enemies. And if anyone hurts them, they will be killed. And they have the power to shut the heavens so it does not rain in the days of their prophecy. Very much like what happened in the days of Elijah. And they can turn water to blood and smite the earth with plagues. Wow. These are going to be two very interesting creatures or people, the two witnesses. And yet at the same time, they're leading people to the Lord. So those who have a tender heart, will they lead to the Lord? Those that have a wicked heart, these witnesses will destroy them. Wow. Let's read those actual scriptures. Verse 6. And these have power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy, and have power over waters to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will. These two witnesses have got a lot of power. God given them a lot of authority to execute all kinds of judgments upon the earth. Verse 7. And when they have finished their testimony, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them and shall overcome them and kill them. So the beast is already here, even though the beast is not described until chapter 13. That's what I'm saying about Revelation kind of bounces back and forth. But we also learned about the bottomless pit opening up, and the angel over all those locust-like creatures coming out, which could be the beast. I do not believe the beast is a man. I believe he's a fallen angel. He might even be Azazel. In the book of Enoch, there's a violent angel called Azazel. He taught men how to make war and make weapons of war and how to kill each other. He's a nasty, nasty angel. And God locked him up because he was so mean. This could be either the angel over the bottomless pit, or he comes out of there somewhere. It could be Azazel. We don't know. But he's a bad angel. He's not a man that's going to be standing in a three-piece suit, deceiving the world, not the President of the United Nations, not the President of the world, or anything like that. This guy is mean. And as soon as he comes out of wherever he's hiding, he plunges the world into war. This is exactly what the Islamics say their Messiah will do. They say when the Mahdi comes, he will plunge the world into war and promote Allah. And I've always said this, and I'll say it again, that the Antichrist of the last days, whatever name you want to call him, will probably declare himself to be Islamic, so that he will have a 1 billion-man army at his fingertips at any time. Instant army. You can ask any Muslim, will you do everything the Mahdi tells you? And they said, of course, because if we don't, we're worse than an infidel. They're afraid not to do what the Mahdi says. And so whatever he says is going to happen. And so this is, you think about the world right now, how many countries are Islamic today? How many Islamics are in the different countries today? I just read today that the new mayor or governor of Scotland, whatever, is Muslim now. Scotland. They just seem to be multiplying and taking over wherever they go. In England, the mayor of London is Islamic. Wherever they go, they're infiltrating everything. So you can't imagine that when if the Mahdi shows up, that's their Messiah, and he says, makes a declaration, kill the infidels, what kind of trouble we're going to have instantly. 1 billion Muslims will suddenly become enemies of Jews and Christians. Well, they already are enemies, but now they feel like they got a license to kill. And they're everywhere. Everywhere. Can you imagine what 1 billion damage 1 billion Muslims can do to this world? Pretty bad. Pretty bad stuff that can happen. So this verse 7 says that when the beast will kill them and shall overcome them and kill them. So for a while the Lord won't allow the beast to kill them, but suddenly the Lord takes his hand off of them, the protection off of them, and the beast will kill these two witnesses. Verse 8, and their dead bodies shall lie in the streets of the great city, which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt, where our Lord was also crucified. What city is that? Where was our Lord crucified at? What city? Jerusalem. So you can see the condition of Jerusalem at the time right here that Lord will call them Sodom and Egypt. Jerusalem will not be in a good place during this time. Of course, the beast is controlling the city. And the image of the beast will be there already. So it's going to be great idolatry in the city of Jerusalem. We will read later on about the idolatry, but see, this is what I'm talking about, Revelation kind of bouncing around. There'll be great idolatry in Jerusalem. And the two witnesses will show up and begin to preach, and then God will take his hand off the two witnesses, and the beast will kill the two witnesses. Verse 9, and they of the people and the kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies. For 3 days and a half they shall not suffer their bodies to be put in graves. Wow. So their bodies will lay for 3.5 days in the streets of Jerusalem. In verse 10 it says that they will have parties and give gifts to one another because they're so happy that these two witnesses are dead. And they will have parties. So whatever these two witnesses did, they upset the whole world except for a handful of people. And all they're doing is doing the work of God. So, yeah, verse 10. The people will rejoice over them. Let us not be those people that rejoice over the death of the two witnesses. Wow. So Jerusalem will be called Sodom and Egypt, where the Lord was crucified. And the people will see their dead bodies of kindreds, tongues, and nations shall see their dead bodies. How does everybody see their dead bodies in the streets of Jerusalem? Satellite TV? Satellite TV. Never in the time of history was this a possibility till today, that the satellite TV can show their bodies lying in the streets of Jerusalem. And we pick this up next week. You will see how they raised from the dead, and a great earthquake will happen to Jerusalem, and that'll be all over the world news. They'll see it take place. Satellite TV. So when people in the past have read the scriptures and Revelation, said, how can the whole world see this? But we know now. People in the past did not know that. But we can see now how the whole world can see it through satellite TV that will take place. Wow. So that's coming. We'll finish off Revelation 10 next week. So we'll start off with answering questions. So if you have a question, bring it forward and we will talk about it. We want to get it recorded, so make sure you speak in the mic, or we'll bring the mic to you. Here comes Pastor Greg. It looks like he's got questions. Two questions, okay. The question was, does Satan fall 3 times, or could it be 3 separate references to Satan's falling? Good question. I think it's 3 times because they're mentioned individually. When Satan fell out of the throne room of God the first time, remember there are several levels of heaven. Enoch says there's 10 levels. Ascension of Isaiah says there's 7 levels. But Isaiah does not go into the judgment places like lake of fire and hell that Enoch did. So the 7th level in Isaiah is where God's throne was. 10th level, what Enoch saw. Satan was thrown out of the throne room of God because he wanted to be like the Most High God. So that's one fall. And then when the disciples were casting out demons, when they went 2 by 2 through the land of Israel, Yeshua said, and as you were doing your work, I saw Satan fall like lightning. That's the 2nd fall. And so the disciples were able to block the work of Satan, and Satan fell to some more levels down. Now we know the 5th level, according to the book of Enoch, that's another place where a whole bunch of bad angels are waiting to be let loose. So Satan may have fell just below the throne of God down to the 5th level. Then eventually he gets thrown to the earth. And then it says, woe be to the inhabitants of the earth, for Satan is thrown among you. That's the 3rd woe, more than likely. The 3rd woe. And when he gets thrown down the earth, it's not good. Okay. Next question. What is meant by the 3 different praises ascribed to Yeshua in chapter 4, verse 11, glory, honor, and praise? Chapter 5, power, wealth, wisdom, strength, honor, glory, praise. Then again in verse 13, praise, honor, glory, and praise. They're really not different attributes or praises to the Lord that are ascribed to him. It's just that, they don't copy exactly the same thing every time. But one's glory, honor, and praise. Another is strength, honor, glory, and praise. It's kind of all the same thing. So it just matter what John wrote down. There's nothing significant that they're not exactly mentioned the same. In verse 13, praise, honor, glory, and power. And so just because it doesn't mention power in chapter 4, verse 11, does not mean he doesn't have power. We know he has power. So they're really all pretty much saying that all authority is his. Yeshua has all authority. And so all those attributes belong to him, whether they are mentioned every time or not. Any more questions? Really? Here's your chance. Any more questions? Yeah. Can we have somebody get Allan a mic so we can get it on recorded? Hang on, Allan.
Is there a significance in 8 where it keeps saying a third of this was destroyed and everything's in thirds?
I don't know if there's a significance to it, Allan, about why he says a third of this and a third of that. I don't know. That's just what John saw and what he said. I don't know of any spiritual significance why a third. I do not know. But there is a lot of that, you're right. A third of this, a third of that, and a third. It's repeated many different times. Twice a third of mankind. That's a lot of people. Twice, that's 2/3. You know, when it said Yeshua is going to destroy iniquity off the face of the earth, he meant it. He's going to get rid of it, iniquity off the face of the earth. You got a question, Greg?
No, I'm turning the mic on.
Oh, okay, the mic was off. So we didn't even get to hear what Allan said. All right. And if you guys didn't know, Allan was asking why all these statements about 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. I don't know of any spiritual significance to it other than that's what John kept saying in the book of Revelation. And so we will continue with chapter 10 next week. Then we get into chapter 12. A lot to say about chapter 11 and 12. The rest of 11, when we get into the rest of 11, a lot to say about 11 and a lot to say about 12 too. A whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to tell you some things that you probably hadn't heard before.
So
I have a question, Rabbi. So we're going back and forth in time. There's nothing sequential about it in terms of time.
No, there's nothing sequential. You know, eventually, it keeps moving forward until the second coming. I kind of liken it to the stock market. And you're hoping it eventually hits high numbers eventually, back and forth, back and forth. That's why I said like Revelation 5:9 and Revelation 7:9. He said, I saw multitudes before the throne of God, praising God. Well, is that before the rapture or during the rapture? Are there multiple raptures? How do you explain all that? Because we're going to see the same thing yet in chapter 11. So how do you see those things? And like I said, in chapter 11, the beast is mentioned as killing the 2 witnesses. But he's not described until chapter 13. It's the way Revelation works.
So are there many different opinions then with all these scholars about the chronology? Is that the big thing? I seem to see that in Revelation about when things happen.
Well, to be truthful, most scholars, when they talk about Revelation, I think are out to lunch, because they always go back to what some of the original early church fathers keep talking about, that this judgment was this emperor, this judgment was that emperor, this was this person. They try to make everything physical. And Hal Lindsey kind of did that too when he wrote his books, But you can see through the words, Hal Lindsey wasn't paying attention to every word given. How can these locusts be helicopters? The things that don't fit. Hal Lindsey tried to make everything natural. Revelation is a very spiritual book. A lot of spiritual creatures are coming upon the earth. That's why the hearts of men will fail and men will run in the caves and say, rocks fall on us. They're terrified. How can you fight these things? And so that's what's coming upon the earth. And so I believe it's both spiritual and physical. I don't try to overnaturalize every statement to try to make it some kind of thing that happens in the natural, because it doesn't fit. You just have to kind of take it by faith that these are spiritual statements that God is talking about. And you try to make everything a natural statement, things don't add up. I mean, you can assume things are natural and then over-spiritualize everything in the natural. You can make up about anything you want to. in the book of Revelation. But it's not to be that way. We are moving in the last days, and God wants us to know what he has said. And then plus you got to compare it with what the other prophets all said too. You have to compare what the other prophets. Remember that one scripture we said? That time is no more, that everything that the prophets had said are now come to fruition, basically. So compare it to what the other prophets said. That's very important to keep on track. And now, time is no more. It doesn't necessarily mean that the clock stopped ticking. It just means that everything's been fulfilled that God talked about. And if everything has been fulfilled what God talked about in chapter 10, that kind of tells you that the rest of the book has to fit in to those chapters somehow or another. And so, now there have been people that have written books that tried to do that. There have been people that tried to rearrange Revelation in a proper format. But they failed miserably in trying to do that. They ended up being criticized a lot because things didn't fit what they were saying. I mean, I give them credit for trying to make it work, but I would say let's just take it as it is written, and understand that it does bounce back and forth. And as we get closer and closer to these things being fulfilled, we're going to get a bit clearer view, I think, of everything that God has said here. And when I taught this at the college, the book of Revelation, after I would do particularly like what we did today, some of the things we talked about today, the students would come up to me and actually say, I'm not sure I'm saved. I'm kind of afraid. I'm not sure I'm saved. And so I would call some of the leaders over and say, I think this young man needs prayer. He doesn't think he's saved after the things he heard today. And then they'd take him off the side and they'd go pray for him. Because something about the book of Revelation got to his heart and made him think about, does he really believe from his heart, or is all of it just up here? That 18 inches between here and here can make the difference between heaven and hell. They need it here, and they need it here. Got to be a connection here and here. And these young people in that college were visibly disturbed. When I taught the book of Enoch, it was the same thing. People came up to me after the teaching of the book of Enoch with tears in their eyes and said, I don't know what to do. I don't think I'm right with God. Can you pray for me? These kind of things get to people's hearts when they begin to see the judgments that are coming. And then God speaks to them and realize, I'm slated for that judgment if I don't get my act together. Then if that's what happens to them, then God did his job. But that's the way it's supposed to be. You are supposed to get right with God. You are supposed to repent. Don't be like verse 9, and they repented not. All these things they saw, and they still repented not. So if Revelation is just kind of bunched up right here in the middle, back and forth like that, they saw a whole lot more than what we talked about, and they still did not repent. That means they have a pretty hard heart, a very hard heart. So we want to make sure we get right with God. Any more questions? Statements? Tears? Crying? Shouting? Okay. Well, I'm doing my best to get something out of you. But, okay. We'll pick it up. Same bat channel, same bat chime time, same bat place. Next week, we'll continue on with chapter 11, and then we'll go into 12 and 13. There is still a lot to talk about. All right. God bless everybody.